Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, the evening edition. This is where we get together on Monday nights and do the same thing we were doing in the morning, except we're doing it in the evening. So if you have questions, this is a good time to ask. Of course, we do these every Monday night, and the best place to go in Makana. So if you're in YouTube, you'll see a little link. You click on that. You see you go into Zoom. You'll click on that, and then you'll end up in Mukana. That's where you can ask the questions. You can vote questions up and down. This show is run by all of you, and the evening show. People are picking up. I was a little worried here. The evening show was not. We weren't getting enough questions, but they're starting to roll in. But definitely keep them coming. Or we'll end early or talk about something for a long time. So anyway, next Monday night, by the way, we've got some special guests to talk about streaming. It's going to be good. That's all I'm saying. I wouldn't miss next week. So some heavy hitters, probably won't get them again. So if you want to be there, I'm just letting you know. So we'll have more to announce soon, but it's about as expert as you can get. So anyway, so stay tuned for that. And then, of course, you get the little session notes in the morning, so I won't go through all of them. I will say that one of the things we're looking at doing on Saturday night is we may all try to cook together. We're this Saturday night and the next Saturday night. On the 17th, we're actually going to be building a show with Mad in the Kitchen, and some of you we'd like to include in that show. In the meantime, what we want to do is play with the idea of cooking. So 5 o'clock on Pacific Standard Time on Saturday. We're still working out all the details. This is just going to be us fiddling. Like, what is it like to put cameras up in a? I'm gonna pull out my little ATEM that I've replaced with my Extreme, and I'm gonna have some phones. I'm gonna try to do the whole thing with phones. So I've got old phones. I'm just gonna stack them all up with Filmic Pro and see what it's like participating. So we'll experiment with different things. John's got a little PTZ remote control, and other people have different things, and we're just going to kind of experiment with it. So that's going to be on Saturday night, this Saturday and next Saturday, and so you're invited to come to that if you're interested. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions. I was about to call it out, and then I realized I'm doing this. I'm going to do it today. So James Babbitt says. Could you give an update on the current project by the Office Hours remote band? I don't know if there's anybody here in the room. Oh, Jeffrey's in the. Yeah, go ahead. What's going on, Jeffrey?
So we've picked the song, and this I'm not sure how much I can really say on this, but we picked the song, and we brought in a special guest, and so the song has been going. We decided that we wanted to kind of change a small direction. So it's kind of turned a corner, but we're on a good track. And I think we'll have something in mid-May. But of course, as things change, we'll see what happens.
Great. So it's coming together. Songs picked. I think Daria is. I think we did talk about that on another show. She'll be involved as a singer. So
yeah, exactly.
So should be a lot of fun. Yeah. Benjamin asks, from San Carlos asks, can we discuss the Zoom OSC challenge previously described as replicating broadcast layouts with feeds from Zoom? Yeah, we can. What do you want to talk about, Benjamin? Sorry.
That's all good. I heard some discussion in Discord the other day. Some folks were interested but didn't quite understand what it was. So I wonder if we could maybe explain it a little further.
This was Paul. Paul brought this up, and the idea was, could we build something that looks exactly like, just pick a CNN or MSNBC or something else and build something that looks like that, but only in Zoom OSC? Like, that was the question. Like, can we build something that, and really, in a lot of ways, it's actually pretty simple, because all the graphics that get generated on a show, you just take the video and pop it over top. So you need to have two pieces of video that plop over 4 or 5 or whatever. But I think it would be worthy of doing. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, we could do it like an SNL skit, Alex. We could take like a show like Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow and kind of emulate that and, have fun doing it. It'd be so much fun.
I think once we get the video up working, I think that we could have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, we came up with a whole. We used to have. Yeah, we used to, you always have to have stuff that you fill in time. When we were doing we used to do Salesforce interviews like all the time. It's just like it was like every day we were doing Salesforce interviews, and they all sit in front of a green screen, and hours and hours and hours of people talking about how great Salesforce was. And we always had this imagining of what if there was a different Salesforce that was just for crime, like for the mob, we called it Sales by Force, it was like, I got these guys, if I got a problem, I don't need to know. I don't need to know who that is.
I don't know. Forget about it. It's gonna be fine.
Just a drop down menu. You just anyway. So, but we did that for hours. So it's always fun to find. We got to find a subject matter that we can do. It's just something to fill the mic with, but can be a lot of fun. All right. So Benjamin, that's the challenge really is just getting two video plates on top of graphics is really that's the base challenge, or 4 video plates on top of graphics. Possibly with a lot of them it would be possibly cropped. So yeah, you're already part of the way there. So yeah, so that's so it's just a matter then of getting rid of the guest names, possibly, or making them look like the graphic. But the hard part, the easy part's getting it kind of working. The hard part's making it look exactly like it. Like that's but just turn up, just go find one. The easiest way to grab footage if you need to from a broadcast is YouTube TV. You can get if you don't have it, you can sign up for the demo, like the trial or whatever, and then collect a whole bunch of stuff, and then you'll have hours and hours and hours of footage. So anyway, that's the easiest way to grab it, and then use it as reference. But again, what I challenge you to do is to get it just right, like not just close. That's where you'll get the most out of it. It'll be 90% of it will be easy, and the other 10% will be harder. So anyway, so yeah, when will you have it done? Next Monday?
I don't know. I'm on spring break, so I've got a little bit of time on my hands. I think the big piece here was Zoom ISO is making this a whole lot easier very soon. So we'll see if that permits. There's a very rapid development happening. I don't know, there's some pieces falling into place finally that mean you can get NDI feeds of all of you. That's what some of you may have just seen, or siphon feeds. So that's really fancy. Awesome. And I know if you had something like that would take native NDI in, there are all sorts of solutions. This would be really trivial. So
well, and also you could even we can make it fun, but you could also just grab one of these shows and grab people out of it and stick it in there. It wouldn't even have to be that complicated. Yep. So to do the test, it's just a matter of building the shell. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see it. So
cool. One question related. If anyone out there has assets already from a broadcast, it'd be awesome if one of you could post it on Discord. But otherwise, I'll go scrape some things.
Cool. All right. Next question we have is David Brady. He said, on the subject of vintage hardware, I have a bunch of old iPod Touches that are locked to older OS versions. Rather than e-cycling them, is there any other viable use for them? Jason?
So that depends very heavily on what you mean by old. They work great as a dedicated, loop playback device. You can get HDMI at 1080p out of the 6th and 7th generation iPod Touches. The 30-pin connector has a nice additional thing that is very, very clean audio output, and the audio is spectacular. You can also get digital directly out of it. I would say that those are your good use cases.
This is my favorite use case for old iPods. This is my phone, but I just have it available.
Yeah. Time code too. I forgot about time code.
This is Atomic Clock. So it'll work. It should work back there, and it's like a BBC clock, and you can set it up with some stuff, and you can just. My old iPad, a lot of my old iPods have been pushed, and old iPads get pushed into the service where I just need a clock somewhere that we're really into precision. So having little clocks that I can look down somewhere over my desk that is giving me a time that I trust in a large, slightly stylish view rather than just a basic whatever. The big thing here is being able to see the seconds, which Apple seems to have a thing against. So there's a lot of, you have to get something that'll show it, and I don't want it to look like an alarm clock. So anyway, that's another good one. Unity should probably work on them as well, just as a thought. Tony?
I'm going to say Cinemaker. Cinemaker is
Oh,
a
using them
good
as little
solution.
cameras. Using the little
Yes.
cameras. Uh-huh.
Or
Yes.
for audio, because Cinemaker will take 4 cameras but 8 audio sources. So I use my, I don't know how old, which version they need now. I haven't tried my old ones, but I use my iTouch as a wireless mic in the pocket of the talent.
That's great. Joshua?
Yeah, on the videos they're showing
Oh.
that they're at least iPhone 6 will work on Cinemaker.
Joshua?
Alex, I stole your idea, and I have an iPad mini 2 as my alarm clock in my bedroom. But also,
Nice.
I've got several touches with dead batteries that could be like spy cameras or security cameras, just FTPing images up.
Yep, absolutely. Jeffrey?
The one thing about those is it's 32 to 64-bit at that point. So if you've got apps loaded on them, that's great. But if you have to try and find those apps again, you might have a hard time if they took them down from the servers. So you have to, you just have to be careful. You could. I just did my iPad 1 and my 3GS and you can go into the App Store. The other problem is trying to log in because now they have the dual authentication, and those older ones won't dual authenticate. So you'll probably even have to think about jailbreaking your device to get it to work with some apps.
Shane Foley in Ashland, Oregon said, Jason, would you mind sharing your thoughts on the new Blackmagic Web Presenter? What is its unique role in the Blackmagic design product lineup, and what are its strongest use cases?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I love the Web Presenter. I'm a complete and total fan of this, and I had to go a couple rounds with Zoom in order to get this working. And I think that they were hush hush about the issue that they had about 1080. And for those who never saw it, I was getting this weird compression, and I would just macro block to death. But the really nice thing, if I can get a hold of this playback here, is that you really do get fantastic decoding of every critical bit. My only wish here was that you would actually get, good audio metering. You get a waveform, that's great, but, even on a 30-inch monitor like the one you're seeing there, it's not big enough. Plus, there's also no Y scale, so that's not really going to help you very much. Having your color notes and your Luma decoded is fantastic. It will pull the time code directly from the switcher that is your program out. In this case, if you look there, I'm using, so I have 2 of these. This is the one that is the mix minus for, the one I'm on right now, actually. And the nice part is it allows me to switch very quickly and see which one I have. It also displays that prominently on the screen. So what's its unique role in the product lineup? You got something, Alex?
No, I was just saying, I love the interface too. The interface really.
Oh, it's so pretty. Like I would show this to a client, and that's very rare.
Right.
Where you can just straight up give it up, and show it. So where it fits is if you're using SDI natively, this is the very best. The one thing that I wish it had that the original Web Presenter, which I also love, has is an individual mixer and an A/B switcher, but something's got to give. Let's see. And what's its strongest use case? Strongest use case is that there is absolutely no delay, and it does not drift. I'll say that again. It does not drift, and that by itself is worth what it costs.
I mean, it's a pretty amazing little box if you need to send something to Restream or to Amazon or to many of the other services. Just putting that, for many people who are doing production, they've got all the stuff. Being able to just push it out is pretty useful. Go ahead, Chris, and then Michael.
Something that might be an interesting morning on office hours would just be for somebody to do a breakdown on what all the Blackmagic gear is. I know I could sit here probably for days and watch the videos on this stuff, but that doesn't mean I understand where it fits in a chain.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just worth mentioning that, for the past year and a half, all the fun stuff has been going to the A10 mini line. And, this certainly doesn't add all the fun stuff to the bigger ATEMs, but a bunch of the things that have been easy about webcam output and streaming in particular, that seems to be the solution for all the existing ATEMs. And, I think for me, just the biggest thing is just having that flexibility of some of the features that you do get with SDI and the bigger ATEMs in a nice package. Especially, what I assume a lot of people have been doing is having some kind of deck link card to pull that signal into Zoom. And that's never been as reliable as a traditional web presenter or something that actually looks like a webcam. And importantly, if anyone else is a Safari user, the web presenters are better in Safari than any of the deck link devices are as well, because of just weird sort of macOS ways that it interprets different devices.
Yeah,
So
it's worth mentioning the way that the CPU load. I mean, if you can meter it, I have plugged these into 2011 MacBooks, and as long as it's got a Thunderbolt port, which means it actually physically has the pipeline, the CPU load is 0. I mean, it's just spectacular.
Next question is from Paul Wallace. He says, how do you turn a Sony ZV-1, is that right, into a webcam? Hint, Jan Landy might know. How do you do it, Jan?
Okay, the first thing that you need to do is you need to download the new firmware, which is 2.0. And if you need instructions, I can show you that or put it in Discord. Once you do that, you have 2 ways to do that. One, you could either use an HDMI cable out, or you could use the USB. If you use the USB, the warning is that the battery will start to die, and then you've got to add a power supply into a phony battery that you put in. I don't recommend that. I would recommend you go HDMI out and then put a separate power cable in, and the rest is pretty simple.
It looks great.
Okay, Jan, I did it. I tried with the USB. It didn't work, so I'm going to take your suggestion and do the HDMI. I got the firmware. Thank you.
What size is the chip?
I think it's one. I think it's 1 inch.
Yeah, looks good. Looks good.
And by the way, Paul, there is one setting when you download the firmware, you go into I believe it's camera number. You see in the settings of the Sony, there's one which is the photo. Number 2 is the video. You go into that video tab and scroll to the 4th page, and then there will be a new line item which says streaming. You have to turn that on.
Excellent. Thank you.
Try
Chris?
that. It'll start streaming right away.
A plus, Jan. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think Jan mentioned it, but they sell a little, it's a dummy battery with a power cord on the end. Definitely pick that up. I think it's like $20 or something.
That's great.
I just tell one thing about that. A lot of people on YouTube do not recommend that. And the most important thing is if you are going to use that, use the power brick that comes with the Sony camera for sure. It's 5 volt and you need to do that. Otherwise you could burn your camera up.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, said Blue Jeans, owned by Verizon, has announced new enhancements to its Blue Jeans gateway for Microsoft Teams solution. Their press release refers to a term, Cloud Video Interop, or CVI. Can anyone comment on the CMI terminology or the Verizon Blue Jeans Teams relationship? Without digging too deeply into it, yeah, go ahead, Peter. Oh, we can't hear you, Peter.
Having read through the announcement myself and also read through my employer's research on the subject, this is marketing speak.
They figured out how to tie the two of them together, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. Is the interop is they got one computer in the cloud sending a video to the other video of the cloud, and then sending the video back to the other. It's a two-way connection. Maybe over NDI in the cloud.
Do we know where Blue Jeans runs, where its backend is?
No.
I'm just curious if it happens to be on Azure, which would be
right. Make it easy.
Gimme. Make it. Yeah. It's a gimme.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jason.
I love when the marketing department gets a hold of something, and I feel like they have some sort of like spinny thing where wherever it ends, they're like, oh yeah, we can trademark that. Let's call it a trademark thing. Cloud Video Interop is absolutely marketing speak for we figure it out how to do encryption in a way that satisfies both APIs. That's what it is.
Joshua.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, I went and looked. The website, at least, is using AWS for name servers.
Right.
So I don't know if eggs are all in one basket, but
anyway, so there. Hopefully, it could be useful. Tony Mobley in Newman says, based on what I shared on the pre-show, should I get a Mac Mini M1 or Windows PC for my small church Zoom services? Almost everything I have is Apple related, but I could do vMix with Windows. Go ahead, Jason.
Without question, I'd say the Mac Mini is dollar for dollar, just hands down spectacular. Just be mindful that they are completely non-upgradable. So if you think you might want 16, get 16. If you think you might want 512 or in my case, a terabyte, get a terabyte because you're not going to move them afterwards.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'm going to come from a different direction. Who's supporting it, Tony?
Right. I mean, especially here, like,
what I'm supporting the church.
Yeah, well,
aren't
you the person going out and making this all work at the church?
Yes, I'm the person that's.
So, do you want to introduce a new technology stream into your mix?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not going to go Windows. I put it in because there were just a few questions.
And you throw it in there. Yeah, you threw it in and let the dogs.
Okay. Okay, fine. But you get my point.
You just threw
Tony.
a steak in there and let the dogs run at it. You know, like it was just, you know, like that. That's all. He's just watching us go. So yeah. I mean, the thing is that as you probably know, I mean, especially with Windows, if you're not a Windows person and then you buy a Windows machine, that's kind of like the worst possible scenario. You know, it's because you just don't know what to do. Paul.
Yeah, I'd get both, and I'd get the what do they call it?
I get them
and get a B-Link and get a Mac Mini. That's what I've got.
And let them duke it out.
And I've got a 43-inch monitor that Guy Cochran recommended. It's awesome. It's incredible. It has four HDMI inputs. You can combine them in any way you want. It's just the ultimate setup. Mac Mini and B-Link and 43-inch LG quad. There you go.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the fact that I think you're going to stick with a Mac, vMix is great. I've never used it because it runs on Windows, but Mimo Live is really awesome too. And so, if you're looking for vMix like functionality on a Mac, you've got plenty of options.
Yeah, and the reality is Mimo Live will do everything you need it to do for the church, and it will do it in a lot of ways. It'll actually do it probably easier than vMix. I think if you haven't used an editing package before, the problem is that a lot of us had grown up with, the hard part that poor Oliver had to deal with me was that, I just use so many other online software editing tools, and Mimo does not look like those. So there was a learning curve for me that I was like, oh, I don't understand this. But once I got over it, it's a pretty nifty little piece of software. So I think that if I would rather, for the kind of show that you're doing there, I'd probably rather do it in Mimo than vMix on either platform. So anyway, something to think about. Next question is from Carl Marxer from New York. I am looking forward to the Unreal classes starting Saturday, right? What do we need to prepare beyond installing the software? So tomorrow, in what goes out to all of you in the morning, we'll have links from Nick. Nick is finishing up some videos that will tell you exactly what you need to be ready for. So we'll have those out there. You can link to it. Mostly it's install Unreal, make sure you have a Steam account, and he's going to give you some stuff to work on. And as we keep on moving forward, he'll give you stuff early so that you have the week to kind of play with it if you have time. We will start at 10 a.m. And run till 11:30. It's a little longer than the Ripple training because there's going to be a lot of lab time. So it'll open up like with Q&A, whatever Q&A that you have for general discussion. Then he'll have a little bit of a demo to show you what we're learning that week. Then there'll be some lab time to work together the way we did with the Raspberry Pi, where we can all kind of bang on Unreal and ask questions amongst ourselves and Nick and so on and so forth. So I think that'll be it should be fun. It's a new experiment. We're kind of taking this learning process down another step, to see how that turns out. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, now did you say it's starting tomorrow or starting Saturday?
we're going to send out what you need tomorrow.
Okay.
It starts Saturday at 10. Yeah. So absolutely. Mark Hadley from Seattle says, I have an Xbox One with the Kinect camera. Creative production ideas. I mean, the Kinect, there's a lot of people have been hacking that to get gestures control. So gestures are something that would be kind of interesting. Thinking about like where can you draw a ray? Can you get enough of the hand, for instance, that you could draw a ray out of it so you could select something on a screen, or draw on a wall, or select things off of, so I think that would be something to play with as far as the gesture controls. The resolution is not super high, but you can actually do some rough scans. That's what there's some scanning software. The Structure, I think, scanner is basically a Kinect that's there. So you might be able to grab some stuff to digitize it, but it won't be super high resolution, but might be kind of useful. Anything else? No? Oh yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah.
No, not really. It's a pretty closed.
Go ahead, Michael Paul.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say the Kinect camera. Also, even if you have a Mac, there are plenty of ways to hack, the signal. It has reasonable, for the time at least, depth mapping capabilities too. So I think the projects can get pretty interesting if you were to combine a Kinect camera as input with some additional video feed, where if you wanted to do, add in some potential information. But I mean, it probably relies more on the gimmick fun side of things than actually using the camera feed.
The next question is from Ken Jones, and he says, Virtual Insanity Clubhouse group was discussing the challenge of hybrid events. Will these people ever learn? Well,
We don't predict the future here. We just, we do our best to.
The hard thing is that you're not going to, a lot of the stuff you're not going to get until you do it. And then you start to get your head around it. You just have to experience it. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I didn't hear the discussion, but if I could pivot this a little bit, I wondered what, I mean, maybe this is worth its own sort of hour, but sort of convincing people to try hybrid again when they've had such terrible experiences. Because one of the things that I'm running up against with talking to other people is that, I don't think people realize how much has changed in the past 12 months in terms of events and tools and ideas that we all have. And I'm wondering, sort of how others approach this idea of convincing people to revisit something that definitely did suck in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges is that not a lot of people are doing great virtual events either. There's a handful of them here and there. They're in little pockets. They show up. I was just talking, I think I mentioned this last week, but I was talking to a friend who a couple friends who have been to a couple events when it goes well, they're like, I don't know if I need to go to physical events anymore. Like that's what happens with the virtual event is when the virtual events click, when they work well, then people don't feel like they have the need to go to the physical events anymore. The problem is that even with all the stuff we're doing here, we're just not getting to everybody yet. So and we're building up a lot of capacity here and we're getting better. But when but as that, and what will happen is this is all going to happen at one time. People are going to go back to hybrids because they've been told that that's the way to do it. And they think that that's going to be the next thing. When you what people have to do who want to do hybrids the people who are saying we should do that are not watching them online. Like they're not on the, they're not, and if they are, they're not critically watching them. So an administrator at a school says we should all go hybrid. They're not sitting in those classes, like they're not sitting there like having to sit in the back of the class, essentially watching them. They read something somewhere that, that was put out by someone who has a degree that says that this is the way it should be. And they go, okay, and that's the, that's where this is coming from for the most part. Chris and then John and then Dan.
Yeah, Alex, can you just take a second and define hybrid once again?
Yeah. So the way we're defining it, the way I'm defining it is that you have basically 4 flavors of events. You have the in-person, that is no streaming, just everybody's in, there's no video. They're just, everyone's just hang together. And those are exclusive events, generally smaller events. There's usually lots of good food and drink. the next is a virtual event, and that means that nobody's in the same place. Like literally, there's a virtual event. There's no grouping of anyone. Then there is the hybrid event, which is that you have a primary place where speakers are with folks that are joining, and there's people in the room. So there's more than one person. Like literally, it's a hybrid event as soon as you put two people in the room. But most of them, they're kind of targeting 50 people or 100 people or whatever. This is pretty much what everything was. I mean, streaming your conference a year ago was a hybrid event, so that's why I've seen a lot of these, because I've done a lot of that. And then the last one is a digital first event, which is that there may be, it's not hybrid. The speakers are still isolated. So that speakers are they're coming from their home, their office, or a studio. But the viewers could be in a room, they could be at home, they could be many rooms. That's the big thing, is that a digital first event lets you stand up 6 rooms in 6 continents or 5 continents, or 2 cities or 3 cities or whatever. And you can have that, every one of them will have an equal experience. And that's the thing that's really important, is that any room you're in and the people online are all getting an equal experience out of a digital first event. They all are on the same playing field, and they all feel like they're being spoken directly to. That you're speaking directly to them. As soon as you put a person in the room, the lower brain takes over, and unless the person is incredibly well trained, they will give almost all their eye contact to the people that are in the room. And they'll be looking for them. They'll look for them for energy, and they'll want to see them nodding, and they'll be looking over and everything else. And it just puts the audience in the back. What I was blown away by was, because I thought, well, maybe we'll have a couple people in the studio. When we did the Madeline cooking, Mad in the Kitchen a couple weeks ago, two cooks was all it took. That you just felt like I felt like I was on the outside. I'm the one cutting the show. So
you think we'd be able to do dinner one night this week?
Sorry?
I want to talk to you about your.
Are you talking to me,
night.
Chris? Are you talking?
Maybe.
I'm not sure if Chris is talking to me.
Again. Open mic.
There we go. Open mic. Anyway, so that's digital first is the fourth one. And so the hybrid events, in my opinion, of all 4 of them, are the worst. Like, that is the worst mix of all the things. The full physical event makes sense. Full digital event makes sense. Digital first, I think, I feel like digital first will be the ones that scale. So that 5 years from now, what we're going to see is a lot of digital first events that are over 1 million people. Like, they're going to be like in a whole different world, and there's going to be 10,000 in one place. I mean, at some point, a ministry, for instance, is going to realize that they can broadcast directly to 8 stadiums at the same time, and they can fill all of them. And that'll be every Sunday. Like it's, or every Saturday, or whatever makes sense for that religion. But the point is that there's going to be, it's going to work, because when you filled the stadium, people are only looking at the screens anyway. They didn't need anybody on stage. They did need each other all singing together and doing that, but they didn't need the person speaking on the stage, and they think they do. But as soon as someone gets over it, it'll be like a landslide. Go ahead, Chris, and then John, and then Dan.
So, not to try to oversimplify something, but Saturday, when we start to do the let's all cook together, is this going to be what you're calling?
That's really a digital event. Digital? It's an online event, because we're all just coming in individually from our own.
But we're locations. Is the plan we're all going to be this big on our screen because we're showing our whole kitchen, or what are you thinking that's going to look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, what we're going to find out. What we found, though, is that we will. What we found with the Raspberry Pi is that because we're all participants in it, you can click to see what somebody else is doing. You can bounce around. You will see little windows, but we're all able to talk to each other. What do and I do think it probably makes sense for us to all decide to make something together. We'll have to talk about it this week about what we want to make on Saturday. The easiest thing to do would be make some bread, or something like that, because we can, because it's easy. It only requires 4 ingredients, and usually most houses have them. So that might be something, or something like that.
But in this format, we have to raise our hand to talk. In that format,
Well, in
Mike
this
shows up.
format, well, we're going to experiment and see what it looks like. But I think for the most part, if you go back and watch the Raspberry Pi, we were all just kind of talking. Like we're all just kind of, talking around and asking questions. I don't quite understand this and I'm looking for this. And, it's a little bit more chaotic. But the idea that we have with Mad in the Kitchen is that the way we're breaking up Mad in the Kitchen for the next one, and so we're kind of figuring this all out, is that there's going to be, we're going to have a group of people that are all cooking at the same time as the show, and there'll be lots of interaction that comes in during the show, before the show, after the show, but everyone's talking amongst each other, and watching and being part of it. And so, which I don't think anybody's ever done before. so the reason that I want to do a couple of these first is I want us to kind of flatten the curve. For anybody who wants to play, it's a crazy thing to have a whole bunch of people cooking together on Zoom. So I want to experiment with that and see what we can do and what kind of. We'll all have different kits. As I said, I'm gonna do a iPhone kit. That's gonna be my big thing. Is I'm gonna see if I can do 3 or 4 Filmic Pro kits or phones that are all like lined up and set up in different ways, and we can kind of play with it and see if it works. I don't know if it'll work or not. Joshua,
I was just gonna say, there's your use for the old iPod touches.
Yeah, Filmic Pro, tie them in. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the it's an experiment. There is I think, and I know that I'm probably saying it too much, but watching the Raspberry Pi thing and realizing when a lot of people have switchers and cameras and understand audio, the collaborative environment gets really interesting really fast. It's a different experience than watching a cooking show, that you're not participating in, or watching a Raspberry Pi show that you're not participating in. And I think that there's this, I'm really focused on the idea of participatory media, which is that we make shows by doing them all together as a group. And that's the show, is us figuring that out. And what I was surprised is how many people liked watching the Raspberry Pi thing. There was still, there's almost 100 people just watching us, fiddle about. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. This is just another version of that. So we'll accept that you can eat it. I wouldn't eat the Raspberry Pi. It's not the kind of pie you eat. So in my opinion, it's just the kind of way how I am. All right. Next question is from Rupert McRae from Dallas. And he said, a study by Gartner predicts that companies will soon use algorithms to analyze the content of workplace communications. As video platforms like Zoom and Teams are the new workplace, does the panel think that these platforms will offer analyzation of meeting content as a service, such as time goes on? Yeah, go ahead, Joshua.
I know Teams already has a near real-time sentiment analysis, and they'll do real-time transcription.
Yeah, Michael.
So it's heading that way.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know if Zoom will, offering it as a service built into the product is tricky to say. There's a lot of things that go into that, but right now Zoom already does various attention tracking things, which gets misused a lot in a classroom. And the automated transcription is already there. So the hooks and pieces can be built. I think the real question is, there's just a cultural change that will happen and a sort of prevalence, and we have to, see how much that changes, because a lot of this has been really possible with email for a long time, and how different companies respond to what happens in email messages and how more or less monitored they are can really depend on the the exact company. And my feeling is a lot of companies haven't automatically done too much with email, but there's probably a lot that companies can do that no one is aware of too.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is there's a lot about corporate culture that can shift and hasn't. Email is a perfect example. And as far as adoption is concerned, at this point, the hardest part was getting everybody onto Zoom, and then the next hardest part is getting people back into the office. the real issue is, will this be done, behind my back? And the answer is, it's possible. And I think that there are much bigger things to worry about in this case.
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I want to preface what I'm going to say. This is my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of the station or its management, because I work for Gartner. I want to say that outright. But having lived, and I was going to say, just like I think it was Michael who said, we've been able to do email analysis for years. The thing I struggle with Zoom versus Teams. Teams is a complete environment in and of itself. They can analyze all forms of communications. Zoom is video, kind of has a chat, kind of has a telephone function. Teams does it all, so they can start to aggregate, and they have. And there is, the courts have already said there's no presumption of privacy on a company-owned email system or a company-owned system.
Right.
Company owns that data, period.
Yeah.
So
because the company's accountable for it.
The company's accountable for it. So they can do all the analysis they want. The question of as a service, I don't know if it's going to get that big just yet. I mean, because you also need to know, you can collect all that data, and that's what we've been seeing when we've talked to some of our clients. It is technically possible to collect it. They have nobody to look at it.
Right. Michael, and then Chris.
Oh, there we go. Wrong Zoom instance. I think Slack is also that environment for a lot of companies too. The big change is that it is now possible to collect more of this information, especially for face-to-face interactions, because putting microphones in conference rooms or people's personal offices would, even if it is legally something where you don't have a presumption of privacy, that would be pretty tenuous for most places to pull off. I do think if there's something that will change this at a company, it'll be people finding legal issues that happen in online spaces and realizing that they have the data to pull out and understand what's happened. And it only takes, a couple really bad examples for someone to start building rules around, what can and should happen, when that occurs at a company. Whether that becomes generic again, I still, I think remains to be seen. But
Richard Nixon will tell you that recording everything is probably not a good idea. That's all I gotta say. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, that definitely, it would open up a big can of worms in the discovery process, having all that data mineable and already.
Because you have to take an active, because once you record it all or you store it all, then you are now actively deleting it. So saying that we're not going to record it because we respect our employees in their communication, we want to leave them free, is the easy way to say that. Once you start recording it, you now have to have a reason that you deleted it, and that becomes a much more complicated situation. Go ahead, Peter.
Just to relate a story, this is about 25 years ago, when I was running IBM's email system when I worked for them, and our storage, back-end storage, continued to grow and grow and grow. And finally, by some odd chance, I happened to be talking to the chief legal counsel, and I was telling him we were running out of this constantly. He goes, "We're keeping it all?" And I says, "Oh yeah, I've got people out there who have 5-10 years worth of email out on their system. We can fix that for you." He came in not more than 3 weeks later and promulgated a policy which I could then implement on the back end to say 18 months of email gone. All right.
After that, yeah.
For discovery, he was thinking the Microsoft case all over again.
Well, it is. I mean, and all of those things. The first thing, my father's a lawyer, and if someone comes in with a car accident, the first thing he does is subpoena the cell phone, and he's been doing that since long before text. Like because it was, he just says, "Are they on the phone?" Because if they're on the phone, it's real quick. It's a real quick settlement. And that's all it usually take. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it's not just email and stuff. I started doing CAD work back in '99, and I did some DoD projects in 2000, and I still have 4 years left before I'm allowed to delete the stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
By the way, I was just washing my hands, and I forgot to tell you, I used to run the email department of IBM. So I mean, How nonchalant.
Oh.
But the thing is, I want to say is you've got all of this different technology right now out there. I mean, face recognition, where you walk down the street and they're capturing who you are, artificial intelligence. I guess there's never going to be an end to what people are going to want to take from us. And so what is the solution? Is there a solution, or is it just now is a snowball going downhill and we're just in for the ride?
Well, within a corporate environment, I think there's a lot of those, and even within a lot of the surveillance, we just have to remember that it's a double-edged sword. There are, I mean, as Americans, I want to, we should be really clear that the reason that we live the life that we have is because of all that data. I work in other countries that don't have that, and things are rougher. And so there's a lot that our government decides not to share with us, just because they've decided that we can't handle a lot of that stuff. But we have to remember that we can be paranoid about it, but we have to remember that it is not without reason to do it. It's not like a general paranoia of the government. There are people actually out to get us. So the thing is that, I think we have to be careful of it. And I very much believe in the privacy of our phone. So like the Apple fights, I'm behind Apple every moment, in that area, because I feel like there has to be a safe enclave for a human being to have something that is, that is theirs. Right. And so I truly believe but our metadata, all those other things, those are actually pretty important points of contact, that keep us safe. So we want to be careful of going too far down the paranoia area there, because there's a lot of good reasons for it. At the same time, I think definitely in social media and other things, there's got to be some other solutions that a lot of us think about a lot around privacy first opportunities. I think the privacy first movement is a opportunity for business to say, hey, we don't actually need all that data, and a lot of these things, basically analyzing the meetings. This is a corporate approach to, we don't understand why they stink. Well, we can tell you why they stink. You're playing a bunch of slide decks. I don't need you to I don't need to there's this whole thing I don't need to analyze your meetings. They're horrible. I've been in those meetings. I have spent 6 hours a week in corporate meetings, and almost all of them are really bad. 6 hours a week for a decade, and they're almost all, hopefully you're going to discuss something, because as soon as someone puts a slide deck up, everybody, literally, if you have a grid like this, everybody else is checking their email. They're looking at other things. I think they're playing games, obviously in some cases doing horrible things, and that have gotten them fired. They're not listening to you anymore. And so the thing is that it's they're like, well, let's study all the data so we can find out what's obvious is that we are really bad at meetings. We don't make them very interesting, but we're going to get data that tells us that. And what we don't want to do is give up the thing that really makes a difference, which is get rid of the slide decks, and actually make it interesting and actually engage everybody to talk. But that's much harder, to do from a human perspective. And so they don't do it. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, if you don't know your jewels, you'd better know your jeweler. A lot of people say, I'd like privacy, and they're not willing to take the time to understand exactly how much data there is. There's a ton of data. If you put it in a microphone, assume it's public. Just assume it's public and then don't worry about it, because yes, there are people out there to get us. Independently of that, I completely agree, Alex. To be getting and holding attention is not a given thing just because you sign somebody's paycheck. It's a privilege to get somebody, an adult, a child, it doesn't matter, and make them sit in front of, a box and pay attention.
The same people that really want privacy are also, typing password as their password. It's
Don't get me started.
So the thing is that if you're not willing to engage in some tradecraft to keep yourself private, then you should probably not worry about it too much and not complain too hard. Go ahead, Joshua.
I was just going to say the data deletion part also depends a lot on which corporate lawyer you talk to, because I do enough work for one of the major news networks that I have email on their domain where my email is gone after 6 months, but I've got Cisco Jabber conversations from 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question from Eric L. in Elgin, Illinois. Can you define the difference as well as the case between loading a LUT versus traditional white balance? Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, that's a great question because it's something that I think confuses a lot of people. A LUT is a 3D map of not just where you start in calibrating color, which is what white balance is, but it is actually every color and every luminance value of every color. So if red as it gets brighter, needs to behave in a different way, it is going to be graphed. It is actually called a cube file because it is a 3D measurement of by luminance do this with color. So think of it as a 2 to the nth more data.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, now you're in my bailiwick. The white balance really is a single parameter, and you usually set it with the camera. You set it by putting a gray card or a white card in front of it and hit white balance. And you're usually adjusting with white balance the lighting that you're in. A lookup table, a 3D lookup table, can map everything and change everything. You can use it to change the gamma, which is the mid-tone brightness. You can change the roll-off in the highlights. You can change how the shadows behave. You can change the color space and how it's mapped. It allows you to completely change the look of a camera. And there are special LUTs that make your video camera look like Kodachrome or Ektachrome or, anything like that. So it is a multi-dimensional, as Jason put it, world, whereas white balance is really kind of one parameter versus the others.
Absolutely. Yeah. So and you may use both of them together to some degree. If you're doing a LUT to 709, so from your log that goes into your Blackmagic camera, for instance, you'll have a LUT that says, this is how I'm going to translate this log data to the color. But still, once you're in 709, you still have to use white balance to get that LUT to go to where it is. The LUT doesn't by itself change the color that it's trying to solve for. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I mentioned, to do white balance, you usually use a gray or white card. To build a LUT is much more complex. And in the case, you build a LUT when you profile a monitor, but you need instruments to do that, and a test pattern with all the colors and grayscale in it and so forth. The other way to build a certain look is to use something like Resolve and do a manual adjustment of all of these parameters. And then from Resolve, you can export a LUT that you can actually load in your camera to give it a certain look. So we've looked at the two different ways of adjusting these two things.
Jason, real quick.
I would add one more thing to this. There are lots of LUTs that do lots of things, and I'm not going to name out the different things and what they're for, but it is not uncommon to use a LUT to bring something to a standard, then use another LUT to kind of to shift it ever so slightly, and then use a third LUT purely for creativity. So they're not all the same, and it's not. I wish it wasn't a generic because it.
Next question is from Robert Harvey from Fairfax, Virginia. He said, did Guy ever say if the new Rode wireless mics could be a good Zoom option or was their latency a no-go? Also, wireless is a bad idea always for Zoom? Wireless can be useful. I don't know whether Guy, I think if Guy was listening to himself, there'd probably be too much latency in the Rode. But if he's just listening to the return, it's probably fine. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the latency is not bad. The best thing about the new ones is that it can be directly connected through the USB as a
sound source.
A sound source. So, and it's got two inputs. It does have delay. It's digital, but as a source in. Guy's trying to do headset listening also. Playing back with another one. So that's sort of a little rougher because you're getting the delay from Zoom and the delay on the headset back.
Chris and then Ray.
Yeah, I did a couple videos too. I can post them in the thing, but we did some distance tests while we were biking and while we were just walking in the neighborhood. up to 200 and plus yards. So, and there was, you don't really hear anything delay.
It's amazing. It's great.
I want
Great.
to thank you, Chris. That was a fun video. I liked it. You had a little arrow pointing where the kid was. It was far away.
And that was the new road, the dual. It's great.
Yeah. And the fact that you can just, now you probably wouldn't do this for production, but the fact that you can just record to the receiver and nothing else, that saves me on a bike ride, because I've got 2 sets of them now and I only have to worry about 2 things and that's it.
Right. And you said 250 yards or 250 feet?
250 yards, almost 300 yards. So almost 1,000 feet.
It was outdoors, and they're just
and that was line of sight.
Line of
But
sight.
when we did
Still.
the one on the bike trail, we were easily 250 yards through the trees.
Yeah. Ray?
Yeah, the thing that impressed me is the transmitters can record up to 7 hours of uncompressed audio within them. And the only downside to that is it doesn't record it it records it in proprietary format. And to get it out, you have to use their little application on your computer and say, I want a WAV file or whatever. So that's the only downside I've found. Otherwise, I love them.
Good. Jan?
Just curious to know that you guys have used it. What about the frequency response and the quality of the audio if we're going to use it for Zoom rather than doing hardwire?
Go ahead, Ray, and then Chris.
I found that the audio quality is quite good with the Rode lavalier, the little Go lavalier. It's under $100, but it's got a nice sound. The built-in mics are a little rougher, not ideal.
Good. Chris, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, mine didn't answer Jan's question, but to add to Ray, the other thing that's irritating about that is when you're trying to get your audio off and you export the first audio clip, when you go back to do the next audio clip and you hit export, you then have to scroll back to the folder. It does not remember the folder that you just saved to, which is aggravating.
Good, David.
Yep, I'm actually using a Gen 1 Rode with this pile mic into the A10 Pro. And at my house of worship, I use one in reverse with an attenuated cable coming out of the sound card and sending that audio into the camera for streaming. So it's a handy little device.
You had Jan and then John.
Just to follow up on, I have the Rode Go 1. If I have the Rode Go 1, is there a benefit in upgrading as far as quality goes, or is something that you should do or shouldn't do?
It's better. Yep. John, did you have anything
Well, as you say, I would definitely upgrade from the 1 to the 2. And I can tell you, I did a test with the Pile and with the DPA 6066.
Yep.
And the 6066 sounds better than the Pile on the road.
Amazing.
Surprise. Who would have thought?
Bob Wallace in Austin, Texas says, what is the Apple BTO Mac Mini M1 with 8-core 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of SSD? How is it different from the stock Mac Mini? Note that the BTO is built to order, or it's built to order, sorry. Is that an OEM hot rod? It sells for $1249, whereas the Mac Mini goes for $699 or $899 for 8 gig or 16 gigs of RAM. Jason.
I mean, you basically answered your own question. It is built to order, and what that basically means is that is not the stock version. If you walk into the Apple store, they might have one of those, but essentially everything is just in time, and it goes on the boat, assuming the Suez Canal is not part of delivering to you on the east.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, it's mostly coming from China, so probably going the other way. Joshua Kuhn from Spartanburg, South Carolina says, panelists that do virtual event production, what do you use when you pitch a client? Keynote deck, PDF, app like Proposify? I'm not familiar with that one. So what do people use for the pitches? Proposify, sorry. Jason?
Man, it really depends. It starts with a really long conversation, and it can be any number of things. But really, when I'm really finishing it and it's down to brass tacks, I always end up with a slide deck with Keynote.
Keynote. It's the best. No, I might have Keynote generate I might have Keynote generate a PDF if they want something, and then I got to put text in it and stuff like that. If I'm going to show it, it's usually a bunch of diagrams, of what I'm going to do and little pictures of how to do it. I'm not that salesy. I'm mostly just like, here's what we're going to do, and here's what it's going to look like, and here's what the breakdowns are and everything else. But, and I don't do anything crazy with Keynote, but I definitely take advantage of a lot of things like Insta Alpha. I like to transition between slides a lot. So, I mean, nothing major, but just like zooms between slides, and the magic move is amazing. So I just did one where you want to show something grow and disappear. As long as you don't change the order, of the objects. If you just have the same objects and then you on the next slide have them move around to where I'm going to do that. We're going to start here, and then we're going to go to this, but it's actually this, and you just keep the same objects. They just animate around just to where you want them, and it's I've done stuff that you'd think I did it in motion in Keynote. It's literally the tool that's made more money for me in the last 2 decades than any other tool in existence. So it's worthy of checking out.
Thank you. I'm just tired of paying for Proposify.
Yeah, I don't know it. So, but maybe it's got something that Keynote doesn't, but Keynote's pretty awesome. So, James Folsing from Minneapolis says, "Is digital first an industry term or an Alex term?" It's actually. Go ahead, Peter. No, I can't hear you.
So the answer is you're missing the noun after digital first. Digital first has been around as a term in industry for almost 10 years. It meant different things depending on the industry.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I actually got the term from Maggie Baird, who's she mentioned something on LinkedIn or somewhere or Twitter about digital first, and I was like, that is the word that I was looking for. So I was talking about it before. I just didn't have a term for it, of what was going to happen. So it's really a Maggie term. so anyway, so I want to put credit where make the bibliography correct. It's definitely not. It's not an Alex term. And Maggie may have gotten it from somewhere else, but that's where I picked it up and was like, I really like that as the right way to say it. So anyway, but I think that I continue to push it because I just think it encapsulates what we're talking about, that you are taking into account digital first. Like we're going to make sure that people on their phones, on their TVs, on their iPads, on their computers are the ones that get our first class status. And then we're going to serve everything else, which I think but let's see, Maggie says technically it's not a standard term until it goes into the EIC glossary. Well, if we keep on saying it, Maggie, see, that's how we get it into the glossary. Is we just keep on. I come from a family of people who run people's campaigns, and the key to the operation is just say the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you got to keep it tight. All right. James Folsing from Minneapolis, Minnesota says, "I like the idea of the world digital first events, but what is fair for timing instead of being US centric times? I have loved meeting all of you across the world, even though I mostly watch." So we design these events differently depending on where the core of the audience is. So it's not a lot of events that I've worked on. It's not where you just look at where you expect most of the audience to be, and then that's when we do the event. So that's so we've done events that start at 8:00 at night because it's better in Asia. We have generally there are some windows. If we're doing a US centric event, if it is typically if it's a business event, 1:00 is a really good time to do it. People don't want to work, and they just came back from lunch in San Francisco, and it's near the end of the day. They can kind of pull it off in the East Coast, and then if it's a public event like a consumer event, 7:00 at night on the East Coast, 7:00 Eastern Standard is a pretty good number, 7 or 8, because East Coasters work later hours mostly than West Coasters. So you compete with less things when you do it. They have more travel, more things or whatever. That's just what we found. We found that the highest view rate has been 7 o'clock in the evening for a consumer event, 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard for the and so then, but when we do it in Europe, then it's 8 or 9 in the morning. Like if Europe's a target, so and then again 8 or 9 at night when we're doing something that's going to hit Asia. So you're looking at who's registered, where are they coming from? What are they, what are they going to do? And then we make a decision about where is the center of mass, and then you build around the center of mass. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. I was kind of curious related to this. Do you build, or have you ever tried building events where over either, a multi-day event or just the course of smaller events, you rotate the time zone? Because one of the things that I struggle with certain events is there may be a center of mass in the US, but the European or in some of the cases, the Australasian population is really critical as well. And if, you always target the center of mass, you kind of intentionally in certain cases, or unintentionally in certain cases, could just leave those folks off if you don't try rotating or multiple events or something like that.
Yeah. So, we're doing that here today. The reason that we do this one is to make it available to people who might not be able to do it during their workday. If they're on the East Coast, we're running right into their work morning. But also because Grant asked for us to do an evening show. So that was like, that's the Monday got done because Grant wanted to be here. He's not here today, or at least he's not on the panel today. Not that I'm bitter, but anyway, so yeah, he's, for our friends in Australia and in other areas there, building something for them at a time that was more reasonable for them to watch was the consideration for Monday night. It also turned out that there's a bunch of you that it's much easier for you to come in Monday night than during the day too. So it's turned out I've got a great different crew here with Joshua and David and other folks that are not usually available during the day. So it's cool. So we'll keep this going. Again, I think that we're going to also end up with guests that are not able to come, to the morning session, but could come. So I think we'll start ending up having some guests on Monday night. I did it. I was non-committal to guests because I wasn't sure. Just wasn't sure how many people would show up. It's a little bit more casual than the other days. But again, as I said, next week will be fun. Jan Landy said, why would you use Filmic compared to NDI Cam or Epic Cam or Camo? Because I'm connecting it to an ATEM. So I want the HDMI. I want the Lightning to HDMI conversion. I'm not trying to get it into Zoom. I'm putting it into a switcher. And so that's what a clean feed, what Filmic Pro is really good at is a clean feed to the switcher, and B, remote control of that camera from another camera or from another iOS device. So I can actually, control one camera from another iOS device. And I think I've never done more than one, but I believe you can subscribe to a bunch of different cameras and control each one of them. So in a cooking environment, for instance, I theoretically can have something that I can touch that will, zoom in, zoom out, that type of thing from the different cameras. And also if I wanted to record that, I can record it in log or even in Dolby Vision. So there's so I can record on the cameras as well as sending them out to the switcher. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, you just prompted something, Alex, I thought about. I use another app called Double Take where it films both cameras at the same time. Has anybody tried to see if you run that through Blackmagic, if it'll come up as two camera sources, or is it just one?
I don't know. I haven't tried it.
That's a Filmic Pro application as well, Chris.
Yeah, and I haven't tried it. I have to download it and give it a shot. Yeah, go ahead, Jan.
So are you controlling the camera using the switcher, or is it an NDI control?
No, it's not under NDI control. The cameras talk to each other over, I believe, Wi-Fi. It's either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. That they are. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
It's both Wi-Fi and
a Bluetooth.
Cellular.
Oh, cellular.
And you have full control of the iPhones using the remote, Filmic Pro remote, Filmic remote, and it allows you to do all kinds of things. Turn the cameras around, change the color, the lighting. You have full control, as if it's a high-end camera, but you're using your iPhone.
And in general, I think that Filmic Pro, I haven't used the other cameras extensively, but it has a lot more fine control over exposure and process and how it's managing the camera than the other ones. Are what they're really good at is connecting you to the computer. Filmic Pro is really, its base is really about shooting high quality footage out of the camera. So it's a different approach. John Wigglesworth from Singapore said, notice that AWS Elemental has added SRT as an ingest format to Media Live recently. Has anyone tried it yet? We have not, but we're interested. so getting SRT into there, it's not something that would be hard to test. So I'm kind of interested. I'm getting closer to the geology test that we've been talking about in the pre-show. I went out and took a bunch of photos yesterday. So as we get closer to that, we'll try to SRT as an input in some way, shape, or form is something that we're looking at. I don't know if we need it in this case for AWS because we should be able to do that from straight into vMix in the cloud. But I'm kind of curious about using the Paul's geology tests to test cloud production. So, of just like, what if we did the whole thing there? So we're kind of thinking through that right now. Jan Landy from Las Vegas says, I have an Xbox One and the power brick was getting so hot that I felt unsafe leaving it plugged in when I was not there to monitor it. I hear that they normally run hot. Does anyone have a solution to diffuse the heat? Go ahead, Jason.
Buy a new one. When capacitors are about to explode, what they do is they rapidly charge and then discharge in order to keep enough pressure in the circuit. Sounds like Michael's hands is right up, so I'm going to defer to him.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I mean, I was gonna say potentially buy a new one. The other thing I'd say is double check the operating specs of the device, and then grab an instant read thermometer if you can, and just tap it a few places, because power bricks can run uncomfortably hot and be totally within spec. There are stories, just to illustrate this, from a few years ago of MacBook chargers being enough to slowly cook an egg on them, which is a problem for different reasons, but has otherwise been deemed within the safe limits of the device. Otherwise, the other thing you can always do is just find, if it's in an area where you have spaces, any old metal heatsink that is sort of rectangular and small enough in shape is something that you could just set it on top of. That would help keep it cool and pull the heat away.
Go ahead, Jan, and then Chris.
When I was doing my research, someone said to me that there's a thing called a power brick cooler, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Has anybody heard of that?
Go ahead, Peter.
No, don't go there.
Well, I was going to say, at the risk of sounding flippant, we used to call those AMDs, air movement devices, known as a fan.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, Jan,
and by the way, I ran the email department at IBM, by the way. Just
Okay. All right. Chris?
So aluminum dissipates heat very well. So just go to the local metal shop and just get you a piece of like 6x6 aluminum, maybe 1/2 inch thick, and just set your brick on it. It should be fine. I use it when I'm welding and I don't want the part to get super hot because the aluminum just sucks the heat right out of it.
Tony Mobley says, has Office Hours talked about Zack Snyder's Justice League and I missed it? We have not. There was a bunch of discussions about when we could start talking about Justice League. I will admit that I haven't seen it. I'm fine to talk about it. I feel like the grace period is over and everything else. I don't know if anyone has any opinions about Justice League so far. Is it true that it's 4x3?
Yes, it's 4x3.
I don't know if I don't.
You know what? I thought I was going to hate it, and then it occurred to me, like, he did this because he wanted it to be like a comic. Like, and that, if you've got a big enough screen, it annoyed me to death until I put it on my 75-inch and, in a dark room. it disappears. So
Okay.
yeah, I
All
thought it was going to bother me, and it
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't usually dive too deep into the details of stuff, but we got HBO Max just for that, and I've watched it now probably 5 times.
The 4-hour version 5
Yep.
times?
And
you got a lot of
I
time.
see something different each time. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, I'm not a big Justice League person. I just like a good movie. But I did notice that the music in this is vastly different than the other one that came out. So it's enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
And the characters are more developed. The story, it's just better. I mean, there's no way to explain it unless you watch it. You just have to watch it. I mean, if 4 hours, it doesn't even seem like 4 hours. It does not seem like 4 hours long.
I just got to find a 4-hour block. Like I had a 4-hour block yesterday. I went to the beach. And that was that, and then half an hour of that was taken up by talking to the honey guy about the custom honey.
Anyway, I had a 4-hour block yesterday, and I slept.
All right, there you go, Jason.
Yes, 4 hours is not enough sleep to get, but you already knew that. We've all done that. Yeah, my thought was it's amazing to see how, I believe it was after the filming was complete that, the second director had to pick it up and really he crafted it in a way and using almost the same footage, if not identical footage, but truly it felt like a complete circle, whereas the original Justice League to me straight up didn't.
I mean, I did watch the original one. And I thought it was kind of a train wreck. So I think that I keep on wanting to go back to it. I'm just like, 4 hours. And I can't even imagine that movie being something that I wanted to watch. I'm sure he made it a lot better, but it was the first version was definitely not watchable in my opinion. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I watched the original one time and I was like, never again. And then, I heard rumors about that, we heard about this for 2.5, 3 years, whatever. And so we checked it out. And again, my wife watched it too. It's just enjoyable. I mean, I can't explain it. It's just the movie with the music. It's just
I have to watch it. I have to watch it because when I saw it, I was kind of like, well, DC's done. Like I was just kind of like, I'm done. They've lost the.
The second one,
yeah.
You get a story.
Yeah. Because the first one was just like, I just was like, well, I'm just going to stick with Marvel because it's so good at Tony.
Character development is fantastic. And I guarantee that if you watch it, Alex, you will not be disappointed.
Okay. You guarantee.
Guarantee.
All right. I'll take that challenge. So I'll work on getting. It won't happen until maybe Sunday, but I'll see. I don't have any 4-hour block until then. What's interesting about it is it's 4 hours long. I was thinking about this. WandaVision was essentially 6 hours long. And the Winter Soldier right now is what my family is kind of working our way through, and that's going to be 4 or 6 hours long. And Disney's getting pretty good at this whole thing because after Mandalorian came out, the first one, I just deleted it. I was like, okay, there's nothing else in Disney that I want to watch. Like I've seen everything. I own most of those movies. Like I don't need to be on Disney. But the second time Mandalorian came out, it got done, and then WandaVision started. Then that got done, and then Winter Soldier, and I was like, oh, they're getting good at this. So they're gonna keep on getting my checks, or my electronic transfer. But it has, the reason I bring that up is that it has me thinking a lot about the future of feature films. That I am finding the slower development. To your point about why Justice League is better, the slower development, like I kind of feel like if I was as a storyteller, why would I want to be limited to 2 hours or 2.5 hours or, oh my gosh, that's 3 hours when I could just have a show, especially now that they're making the shows at this, the Winter Soldier show, the Winter Soldier, I can't think of the whole thing. I just can't think of Winter Soldier, it's at the same level as most films. Like, I mean, it's not like they cut a bunch of corners. I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, and there's a couple of them that, like WandaVision, you felt like, well, they didn't have a lot of budget for this one. A couple of them, but overall, and I think Game of Thrones kind of turned that corner of we're just making a feature film that happens to be stretched out over a long period of time, and I just wonder whether I really, as a storyteller, whether I would really want to do a feature release when I could just get a film, because I arguably could make actually more money, and have more time and flesh it out and build out the characters in a deeper way than I can in a film. Go ahead, Peter, and then Chris, and then Jan.
Well, it kind of reminds me of during the 70s and 80s, the miniseries craze, where they would take a book like Shogun, which, if you've never read it, is a beautiful book with lots of characters, and they were able to execute because they took multiple days to do that, multiple 2-hour slots.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Chris?
Yeah, had Cobra Kai been made into a 2-hour movie, it would have crashed. The fact that they ran that out and developed those characters made that super successful. There was another miniseries that came out. I want to say this is 2001, but it was called Taken from Steven Spielberg. I don't know if anybody watched it.
Mm-hmm.
That is my favorite one after Band of Brothers. And of course, it was 10 hours long. But had that been a 2-hour movie, it would have been rushed. Well, and it would have sucked.
And Band of Brothers is just such an amazing example of stretching out.
Well, yeah, of course, that's number one.
I mean, they just took that all the way to the. I mean, it's just such a great development, And so, and again, like I look at like what was it? 6 Feet Under as a very long one, series after series after series. The most amazing thing about 6 Feet Under, I won't say what all of it is, was that the end of 6 Feet Under is the most amazing end to any show any series I've ever seen. And you can only get it if you watched all the other shows. Like, it was like if you just watched it, like, it will make no sense at all. It is incredibly deep, amazingly done. And you only get it if you watched all the shows, And I think that is an example of, that process of building these characters so deep that you feel like they're, you know them, Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, I have to mention The Mandalorian. I thought that was spectacular as far as a movie goes, even though it was a TV show.
Yeah.
But the other thing is now there's a big war going on between Amazon Prime, Netflix, HBO, Hulu, all of that. And you can't have them all. So
you can, actually.
What would the panel recommend? What would be the recommend?
Here's what happens is
totally can.
You can't have them all, especially when you say, I don't want to buy cable. So, like, because I don't buy cable. Like, I do. I have you as a business expense. I have YouTube TV because I use it for research. But outside of that, so I have some access to stuff, but I don't watch almost anything in real time from there. I record like super sources and lower thirds and stuff like that. But I don't watch. Otherwise, I don't watch any cable TV. So I haven't had. I had cable TV for 3 months in the last 25 years. And so when you take that expense out, you can spend it on all kinds of things because cable TV was really expensive. And so you just, you can buy a bunch of subscriptions with it. And then you're like, oh, I don't need those anymore. And the scary thing is all the back catalog. We were talking about this earlier. My family's working through Heroes right now, which is actually remarkably good. I can't remember. It was 15 years ago. There's a remarkably good, well drawn out series. I don't think Heroes Reborn was very good, but there's like 4 years of, I don't know, 88 episodes that we're just slowly winding through every night. When I finish this, I'm going to go and I'm going to make a Manhattan and sit with my kids and watch Heroes. Like that's what, like that's the end of the day, And when we get to the end of that one, we've already decided we're going to do Lost, so then Lost will last for 6 months. And so the thing is that is like, when you get used to that, the problem you get into is that you look at a movie and you're like, ooh, 2.5 hours. I don't know when I'm going to do that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Jan, we've pretty much got all those. And I haven't had cable TV, Alex, since you mentioned that you could pretty much survive on iTunes back in 2004 on Mac Break Weekly. I just said, I'll try that. And I haven't had watched TV since then. But hey, when are we going to do the Office Hours Mystery Science Theater? Because I'm up for that.
So the problem really is that the platform, the Netflix party kind of stinks. So it's not built for what we need it to do. And what we need to do is find somebody who wants to write a new one, which wouldn't be I don't think it'd be very hard. I just can't write it. There's a fundamental flaw in the way that Netflix party works, and it will never scale. So if we got any bigger than we were on the first one, it was already starting to break, and the reason is that the problem with Netflix party, in my opinion, is that it is taking commands from everyone, What it should be doing is identifying a maximum of 2-3 people, and preferably just one, that controls the playhead, and have all the players subscribe to the playhead. If they did that, they'd be able to scale. You could scale that infinitely, and you'd actually have a much better. You could turn it into a real thing, but they would have to rewrite it. I don't know if they're going to do that. So the problem that I have is that if it got popular, it would just get worse. Like so I'm trying to figure out whether, I find somebody to write it, or I just say it out loud and somewhere it shows up and we help promote it. I have some friends with a lot of following that were like, "Hey, we're ready to play," and I was like, "Not yet," because that'll be 1,000.
Aren't you used to saying, "I wish I had this," and it just shows up?
Well, I just said it, so we'll see if it appears. But I think fundamentally the thought process behind Netflix was that you and your friends can all talk, and anybody can stop it and talk about it. And I get the thought process. Unfortunately, that thought, and again, the other thing is I would get rid of all the chat in it. If I was going to write it, I would make it much simpler. Like, that chat's important for them. It's not important for us. We've got Makana. So we don't really need, we don't need that, and so changing that structure around would probably fix it. Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, in lieu of nobody wanting to write it, and in lieu of Mystery Science Theater being a heavily scripted and then re-recorded thing, whereas Zoom is not, I think the easiest way to do it would just be have one person come in who is the time code, and everyone syncs to that. And if you can't figure it out, then you can't figure it out.
Yeah, we did it the first time we did the same movie years ago, like 2005. We told everyone to just start their DVD at the same time, in 3, 2, 1, go, and it worked pretty well. It actually worked better than Netflix Party. Joshua,
I'm gonna preface and just say, for any lawyers watching, I'm totally kidding. I hear good things about screen scraping Zoom with the full screen, and
so
it's not worth.
But that's the reason we don't do it. The cool thing about Netflix Party, or whatever they're calling it now, is that they're not breaking any laws. It is like we could totally do it. The reason we got the idea of doing this was because we were sitting around doing it, like but you can't do it and not, get in trouble. Go ahead, David.
I was totally kidding.
Yeah, exactly, David. Oh, that's it. Alex from Toronto says, "Do you know the reason why AWS only offers Windows Server and not Workstation?" Go ahead, Peter.
No, well, the reality is they do offer Windows Workstation. It's called Amazon Workspaces, and it's virtual desktop, and I use it at least once a week for work because it's the only way I can submit my bleeping time card, because that's an ancient system. But it is a full Windows Workstation environment. It's not named, obviously, in an obvious way to say it's Windows. That's probably a branding problem.
Good, Joshua.
To add to what Peter was saying, it also makes you stickier, because then you're using their cloud storage and their work mail and everything you build on there, and then your bill with them gets higher.
Gabriel Ung from Malaysia says, what video format is the best content playback for live streams? File size versus quality to consider, and also load on the playback device, Mac or a Raspberry Pi. Thanks. Note, ProRes, Proxy, H.264, H.265 considered for playback from QLab or Mimo Live. Go ahead, Jason.
It depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. You really threw a wrench in the gear at the very end with, Mac or Raspberry Pi. Generally, the more compressed it is, the better it will look, assuming you've got the horsepower to decode it at the time of playback. So H.265 or HVAC, high efficiency video codec, is fantastic. H.265 has its benefits, assuming you've got the silicon to use it. I'd say that the world standard is either ProRes, where there's 0 CPU load, or H.264.
Yeah, I think
that's
the most compatible will be H.264, and it'll play off of most things well. And I think that's probably going to be your best bet. ProRes will play off of QLab from a hard drive, probably a little bit smoother, just because it doesn't have to do any decoding. But for the, we've used both. moving files around with ProRes is heavier and keeping them straight. And so a lot of the stuff we've done for playback has been H.264 because of that, Jan.
Is that H.264? Would that be like, what would be the extension on that? Like, for example, when I download my Zoom videos, it's MP4, so there's WAV and there's MP4. And what was he thinking along those lines?
Well, so you have a codec and you have a wrapper. So the codec is how it's being compressed. And then the wrapper is how it's interfaced to the OS and to apps and so on and so forth. It's where it's all the hooks for it. So the issue is that H.264 can be an MP4, it can be a MOV, it can be an MV4, it can be, there's all these different formats. Those are all wrappers. Those are all set up to interface with the apps. But the compression of the frames itself can be something. Now, ProRes is always a .mov. But the H.264 can come in lots of different flavors and all still be H.264. And some things won't be able to read it if it's .mov. If some people, MP4 is the most compatible wrapper, but it can do some funky stuff with the scale if you're not careful. Chris, real quick,
it might be off what he's asking, but I have a lot of videos that I've recorded, the uncompressed stuff that I've got on my FTP. And if it's a .mov file and I send that link to somebody, it downloads. They can't watch it. But if it's an M4V, it starts playing. Why is that?
That has to do with Chrome. Chrome doesn't know what to do with the move. Chrome knows. Like if you do the same thing with an HLS, you'll send it to it, and if you MU38, on a Safari, it'll start playing. If you send it if you open in Chrome, it'll just download a little file, which is actually useful if you want to look at the M3U8. All right, we're going to jump to the next question because I'm running out of time. Keenan Campbell says, "What brands of gray backdrops does the panel like? I ordered a couple eras on Amazon, and they are too thin and almost see-through. I would like one to put up and take down as needed, less than 1/3 of an Alex. I think we can do this because this one is less than 1/3 of an Alex." Jason, and then Peter, and then Chris. Pretty quick. I'm running out of time.
I don't have my echo pedal. Lastolite. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say, Lastolite, that's what's sitting behind me now.
Mm-hmm.
The 5x6 one, it stands up by itself and folds up. It reminds me of the old style windshield.
Yeah, it
shades.
Is.
Just trying to twist it, and it folds up into a circle that's about 2.5 feet across.
It's really big.
Watching Sky Gleason take one down is hysterical. No one's going to get that.
Yeah. The one behind me is a Lastolite 6x7 at 4 feet. It needs to be just a little bigger than the 5x6. Go ahead, Chris.
I buy vinyl 9-foot wide Roscoe backdrops or paint on a wall.
There you go. Yeah, that'll work too. The Lastolites for me, being able to fold it up and take it somewhere is useful. And the Lycra, I went through a lot of cloth and a lot of other things I was trying to figure out, and I really like Lycra because it'll pop open and then you can spray it with water and it'll get rid of most of the wrinkles really fast. So it's nifty. And that's the magnet. Is that the magnet mount?
Oh yeah, these are fantastic.
Does Lastolite make that?
Coolest addition I've ever seen to a C. Yeah, Lastolite makes these. They're about $100, but it is straight up the best C-stand expansion I've ever seen.
And then finally, the last question is from Roscoe Jones. He said, "Can Tony speak of the secret room experience with John I today? Did John sell you on the technology?" And we'll have to go pretty quick because I'm late for dinner now.
We talked about Cinemaker, and it's pretty cool. Basically, what it is a switcher, an iOS switcher. And you can do most of the things that you can do with the ATEM Mini, but you don't need the switcher. You're actually doing it wirelessly or wired. And if you want to connect a high-end camera, there's a solution for that as well, but it's primarily for iOS cameras, iOS devices to use as cameras. You can use up to 4 cameras, iOS cameras, and 8 iOS devices as audio devices.
Now, can you and from whatever, and you go to an iPad, for instance, and then cut it? Is that that's the concept?
Well, you're cutting it on you originally it was controlled by an iPad, but now you can control it from the Mac, and it works on the M1s. So I'm playing with it, and John has a few more licenses out, and he was, asking if anybody wanted them to hit him up on Discord. So,
well, and the question, and then how does it go? Can you get it into Zoom, or does it stream, or where do you go with it?
It works primarily with Zoom, and the conversation that you guys had this morning, and is related to Cinemaker being grandfathered in. And some of the new features that Office Hours talked about this morning is a part of the conversation that John and I were having today. So it is definitely worth a look. You can bring in video. You can bring in copy. I was going to say copy, but text. All of the features that you typically can do with the ATEM Mini, you can do with this device. And I've been playing around with it the last few days, and I've actually was going to try to use it tonight with the ATEM as seeing the different sources and switching. But I said we'll try that another night. But it's really cool. Definitely worth a look. I think it's just $200 for a year to use this software, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, check it out. I might ping John and see if I can play with it a little bit. I got a bunch of phones laying around. So anyway, all right, we made it through another one. It's good. It's good. At the beginning, I was like, I don't know if we're gonna have enough questions to get through the whole. I always think that. I always get into the I don't know if this is going to work, and then it works. So great job by our audience, our producers, asking great questions. Keep this thing rolling, and of course, thank you to the panel for coming in. It's great to see the new faces that we don't get to see in the morning, and then the old faces that also come in and keep it all tied together. So thank you very much, and we'll be back first thing in the morning. I feel like it's not very far away. All right, see you, everybody.